they killed their father, and so it's like, and they're twins, lost boys. So we'll see what that says about me. So welcome to my video for today. My name's Gabrielle. I make a lot of book-related videos with all the random things that I read, and I like to chat about them. I'm really excited because I actually just recently had 500 people subscribe to my channel, and so this is my thank you to all of you who decided to subscribe. You know, it's kind of a good sign to me that I am finding people who enjoy talking about or hearing about the same topics that I like to discuss. And really that was why I started making videos about books, is that I, rediscovered my love for books, and after a while there wasn't as many people in my actual life to talk about these things with, and so I wanted to share that with some other people, and so I'm really thankful that I have you all here. But today I wanted to talk about a dark Peter Pan retelling series that I just recently finished. This is the Vicious Lost Boys series, and like I said, it is a dark romance Peter Pan retelling, and Peter is like a grown man, a grown adult. So I don't even know exactly what to say about this. I had so many thoughts, but I didn't want to just come on and ramble about them with you, because if you've read them, you'll know there's some different things that happen. So if you're interested in reading this series, I will probably give some spoilers in the plot, so maybe skip over that, and come back to this video after you finish it. For those that are interested, there are 4 total books in this series. It's now finished with the main characters, but I think there's going to continue to be some spin-off stories with different characters in the story that aren't the main character and the main Lost Boys and Peter. In terms of what happens throughout the main 4 books, so I first found them because I kept having it recommended to me on my Kindle Unlimited. So we'll see what that says about me. Let's not think about that for now. But I finally decided to check it out because obviously if you're, well informed with current books that are being published, there are tons of fairy tale retellings. And so, I'm interested in some of them, and I had not yet read a Peter Pan retelling, but I love the Peter Pan and, Wendy and Lost Boys story as a kid. So I was like, okay, let's see how a dark, more spicy version goes. Plus, I was coming off of reading a lot of books I didn't like in January, and so I wanted something that would just be super easy to read. And all the books within the Vicious Lost Boys series are under 300 pages. So I knew it would be really easy for me to read, and if I didn't like it, I could, move on very quickly. So the plot. I'll be giving kind of a plot overview of all 4 books since they're so short, and I also wasn't recording my thoughts after each one. The story just melds together in my brain. But it starts off with Winnie Darling and her mother, and so she's an only child and it's just them 2, and they're panicked because tonight is the night that Peter Pan is going to try to come and grab Winnie and bring her to Neverland with him. Over all the generations of their family, Peter has come, kidnapped the Darling, women that have been born out of Wendy, who was the original Darling that came to Neverland in the story. And whenever they go, they get messed up in the head, where they become crazy. And I think it's supposed to be they're schizophrenic is how they describe it, but they just they don't specify, but they say mentally ill, and something goes wrong where they're not the same and they're not able to act normal in society anymore. So they're terrified because Winnie's the next one in line, and her mother has already been, snatched up years ago and returned, and so she is nervous. Over the years, her mom has done like protection wards and gotten mystics and doctors of all kinds to do these things to Winnie's body to hopefully fend off Peter's magic. They have this like secret bunker in their house, or the secret room where she can go when he's about to get her, to hopefully ward him off with the various magic and spells. He comes to the house to snatch her, and of course, none of the things work. So she's snatched, she's going to Neverland with him. But the thing is that Winnie is actually not very afraid. She gets to Neverland and she's like, oh, actually Peter's kind of cute. Like, he smokes a lot. I imagine him as like a biker kind of look. That's like how I see him in my head. I don't even remember him, the book, like describing his looks very much. I'm sure it did, but like, I just, in my head, I insert like leather jacket with a cigarette and like scraggly hair. And she's like, oh, actually he's really hot. And then she gets there and he has his men help restrain her. And so then we're meeting the primary Lost Boys. So there's Peter Pan, who is the Never King. There are Vash and Cass and their twin Lost Boys. And then there's Vane, who's my personal fave because he reminds me of like a darker Lorcan from Throne of Glass, who I love. But anyway, and so yeah, those are the four main boys. So they're like tying Winnie down so she can't escape, and they're trying to get the fairy princess, who has powers to look in people's minds, to look into Winnie's mind to find out where Wendy Darling, the original Darling, stole and hid Peter's shadow. Part of the retelling is that every night Peter can emerge from his bunker, but during the day he has to stay underground in the dark because he previously had the Neverland shadow of life in him, which gave him power over the island and sort of, yeah, sourced his power overall. But their ancestor Wendy stole it and hid it away from him. And so since then, the island has kind of been dying as a result. The fairy queen, who is young, is actually Cass and Bash's younger sister. They were previously in line to take the throne, but they killed their father, and so it's like an act of treason or whatever, so they are exiled and banished from the royal family, and she has the throne now. Her father's dead and their mother is gone, and we learn that their mother is Tinkerbell. So Tink in this version is actually like a dark villain. She actually kind of is a villain in the original story. Like, she's mean to Wendy and she doesn't like her out of jealousy. And in this book or series, she is also kind of a villain. It's difficult to describe her relationship with Peter. They weren't romantic, but they were best friends and like loved each other, but it was kind of manipulative. Like, Tink loved his attention to her because Peter just wanted like a womanly figure to love him because he didn't know where he came from, and he always felt like an absent of a motherly figure, or he always had a suspicion that his mother like abandoned him, and you know, he always felt that like abandonment. So when he first got to Neverland from wherever he was left, which we learn in the last book, Tink was, I think, his very first friend, and so they had that bond. But over time she got evil and started doing things that would like separate people on the island, causing arguments and violence. And as Peter became the king of Neverland by having the life shadow, he wanted to get rid of that drama and violence. So he said the magic words that would make her leave, which were, I don't believe in fairies. And so she disappeared. That happened like off page. We learn about that over progress in the events, but it doesn't actually like happen live in the books. So to summarize it all, over the course of the books, Winnie captures the hearts of all four of the men, so it is reverse harem, And yeah, it is more of like an explicit adult series, so it's definitely not YA or for children at all, or I mean like young people. It's kind of interesting. So it's a little plot light, which I think impacted my enjoyment of the series. At first, it was like such a good laugh. Like I didn't like love the books for the content, but it was just like hilarious. Like it was so funny to me. I think because I hadn't ever read a Peter Pan retelling, and this one was just like so silly, but it was easy to follow along because of the background knowledge of the previously established movie and that story. So it was like very entertaining. So in that regard, I recommend it, like if you want to be entertained. And it was so easy to read since it's so short, it just felt like so easy. But overall, the plot wasn't like my favorite. Eventually they do get the, I'm forgetting her name, Tilly, the queen, aka Cass and Bash's younger sister, to go into Winnie's mind to try to find out where Wendy Darling hid the shadow. And it's this like mind dive that has caused all of her previous ancestors to have something go off with their brain whenever Peter's done with them. But she is able to like get them to stop, and at that point the men have already like started to have feelings for her, so they stop it and find another way to get the shadow. Winnie soon remembers that there is this trunk of sorts that they've had for generations and generations, and so they go back to the human world. They look in the secret hidden compartment within this trunk. That's her ancestral trunk, and of course there is hidden the shadow. So they capture it, they bring it back to Neverland, and after a series of events, Peter finally captures his shadow, like it comes back to him, and they are, yeah, restored. His magic is restored. But right after he does that, who comes back to the island but Tink? And we learn that Tilly, the queen and Tink's youngest daughter, or only daughter, gave up her throne, like the physical chair, into this mysterious lagoon that's been a part of the story. It's where Peter emerged from to get to Neverland. It's where like you can give something and the lagoon will like give you mystical powers. It's like known to be this mysterious source of power. And so by sacrificing the throne, Tilly was able to receive Tink back as a gift. And so Tink is now back to cause some drama in the story. And throughout it, we're getting glimpses of Vane's brother, whose name is Rock, or the crocodile, who is a sort of human version of the crocodile in the cartoon movie. And it's kind of funny because he has, if you remember, whenever Hook, and Hook is there, and Smee, but if you remember, whenever Hook would hear the clock ticking, he would know the crocodile was coming. And so it's kind of that same thing. So Hook in this story has an aversion to clocks, and so he has none on his pirate ship. And Rock, his sworn enemy, has a clock on him all the time, but he uses it because he's like a mystical being where he has to like consume people to satisfy his appetite, or he'll go crazy and just like go on a rampage of consuming people. So he keeps a stopwatch or a clock with him at all times to keep track of when he needs to feed next. So that's kind of how like those elements were tied into the story. So like I said, Rock or Crocodile is Vane's brother, and they are from a different island of the various islands around Neverland. And yeah, so they're kind of in the story as well. We get glimpses of their drama. So Crocodile and Hook both had a thing for Wendy, and we learn that she was actually pregnant when she was exiled from Neverland after so Croc and Hook both had a thing for Wendy when she was exiled from Neverland for taking and hiding Peter's shadow. And in this story, Peter and Wendy actually weren't romantic either. So he wasn't romantic with Tink or Wendy, which was kind of a nice twist because I never fully loved Wendy and Peter. as a pair anyway. But she was pregnant when she was exiled, so it's implied that like, ooh, was it Croc's child? Was it Hook's child? And so they have a fight amongst themselves to try to get to Wendy when they learn that she's actually still hidden on one of the islands around Neverland. But at the same time, they also kind of have some love interest between each other. So that is what the sort of spin-off series will be about, because we're left with, in this series, them going off to find Wendy when they learn that she is still around. So there's lots of things that happen when I describe it, but in reading the books, like, there's not really that much, it feels like. So in the very last book, which just came out recently, and I was interested to find out how things were gonna wrap up, we are left at the start of when Tink returns, and so we're like, oh no, all this drama is gonna happen. What's gonna happen with Peter? Will he have his powers still? And the last book was a little bit of a disappointment for me. So Tink is there, and really all that happens in the book is like, there's a ball that happens at the castle where she was originally queen and Tilly's now the queen. Tink wants the boys, Bash and Cass, to have Neverland's shadow so they can rule. So she wants Peter to give up the shadow to them. They don't want it, they want to be loyal to Peter, but at the same time, more than anything in the world, is their wings back, because when they killed their father and were banished, they had their wings removed. So normally people's wings, when they're taken in this story, they are stored in some kind of container and it's like kept in the castle for them to, I think, either earn it back or steal it back, which in this fourth installment is what they try to do. So Tink, upon her return to, you know, kind of take over Neverland again, she holds this big ball, which Winnie and all of the Lost Boys go to. So Cass and Bash try to find the container where their wings are stored and steal it back, which they are unsuccessful at doing. And Tink kind of reminds Peter about his weaknesses by sharing like, oh, remember all the conversations we used to have when you first came to Neverland, and starts to like poke at his insecurities. In the last scenes, Tink attacks Winnie. She does this like mind control on all the Lost Boys, because there's like a bunch of them that live around, and so they are all attacking the four main guys, and she wants to take the shadow to give to her sons. And so finally Peter decides to just give them the shadow. Cass and Bash are unsure if they should take it, but Peter just wants to be rid of it. Like, he doesn't want to have the drama of, you know, all those years trying to find the shadow just for it to ultimately like not give him any peace. He just wants to be done with it, so he gives it to them to have, and so they have this shared shadow now and they get their wings back. So yay to them. But then Peter is now left with wondering like who he really is. This is where another little element of the original story ties in. So at the very beginning of the fourth book, there's like an epilogue where a woman has this unruly child who, if she keeps this child, she won't be able to give any attention to any of her other children, and so they'll all suffer because this boy is just like too much to handle, too much for her world. So she gives him to the lagoon to take care of him. And so then Peter learns this as he's like choking in the water underneath the, you know, lagoon's surface. And he learns that his mother was actually a star. In fact, she was the second star on the left, which again is a little tie-in to the original story. He learns that his mother did love him, so he's not like an abandoned child. Well, I guess he was abandoned, but he learns that like she loved him, but he was just like too much for that world. So he needed to go somewhere where he could be more free. And in like this realization, he comes into his true star power, and he's able to still have some elements of the power that he did with the shadow, like being able to fly and all those different elements. And that's kind of the end of the story. So with his power now, Peter is able to defeat Tink, and he kind of like disintegrates her into fairy dust with his like strong, raw star power. and all of the Lost Boys are like awakened again, so they're not under her mind control, and all is well. If you've read these books, let me know your thoughts. Overall, like I said, I thought these were kind of like a laugh, and they weren't like the best quality of writing to me. I think if there had been more in-depth plot, that would have been great. But I'm assuming the author kind of just wanted it more for like the spicy elements, more for that fun. And they were also short. So like if there was more plot, they obviously would be longer. So if she was looking for something that was just light bite and a quick read, I think that she accomplished it pretty well. I don't hate the Peter Pan retelling premise overall. I kind of like it better than some. Like I'm not that into Beauty and the Beast. I need to find some like Mulan retelling. That's what I really needed in my life. Yeah. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And like I said, let me know in the comments if you've read this, if you never want to read anything like this, or if you've read something similar. I would love to know. Otherwise, I'll see you in another video soon. Bye.